what I saw was folks that have never held a club before and folks that have been golfing their entire life but never found a community that they actually resonated with were hanging out together.
Peace, everybody. You're listening to the Future Money Podcast, presented by the Interledger Foundation, where we invite people of all backgrounds and disciplines to imagine a financially inclusive future. My name is Kokayi, and today I'm speaking with Modi Oyewole, a Nigerian-American entrepreneur, creative executive, and community builder whose work lives at the intersection of culture, sports, and storytelling. Modi is the founder of Swang, a culture-first platform blending golf, fashion, music, and more importantly, community to reimagine who the game is actually for. Modi, can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for the intro. I appreciate it. And great to see you.
Good seeing you too, brother.
Yeah. I was born in Washington, D.C., grew up in Rockville, Maryland, right outside. I kind of grew up in a very interesting household from, both my parents worked at the World Bank. So our their friend circle was super diverse. Listened to a lot of different types of music. I'm Nigerian, first generation. So a lot of Fela Kuti and King Sunny Ade, but then a lot of like Bone Thugs and Harmony, Mariah Carey, Paul Simon, Wynton Marsalis, Beatles, Deep Purple, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. I can keep on going, but a lot of different influences. And then, I just loved music as a kid. It's what we spent the weekends doing. In the morning, I go through my dad's records and CDs and would just dance around in the living room to all that stuff. And I also, I went to school in Bethesda, which was like 15-minute drive home to my house. But the way the bus route went home, it took me an hour and a half to get home every day. So music was a huge part of that journey. And I had a Walkman and then a Discman, and CDs were everything to me. So I just was like in that world, I was sitting in music for an hour and a half every day. When I got to middle school, I was the kid that was burning CDs illegally and selling them. Shout out to Napster and Kazaa and all those peer-to-peer file sharing platforms. And then, I was also a curator. Kids wanted Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney Spears. And I'd be like, well, I just found this new Nelly Furtado remix with Missy Elliott that I know y'all don't know about. So let me just add this to your disc because you only put 10 songs. I got 7 more songs to work with, 74 minutes on a CD. So that's when I was like, oh, I like money. So I was selling these CDs, right? Burn CD, $5, mix CD, $7. And, also curation. Like I actually wanted to put people on to stuff. So yeah, I guess college, I was interning summers at Def Jam in the A&R department. That's the side where like the music is actually made, where the executive is finding the producers and helping really like tell the story through the music. And this was when Jay-Z was president. So I was walking around every day and Jay-Z was walking around. I was just crazy. Like what kind of 18-year-old life is that, right? So It's crazy because my job was really like, go to Boston Market, make sure Tata's, food isn't cold, get back really quick. And then they upgrade you to like, okay, this is the CD for graduation, Kanye's graduation. Can you go make sure this makes it to the mastering spot in time? Like, and then you start to get invited in meetings and they ask you, what do you think about this Omarion record, Entourage? And it's like, what is my life? So, 2 summers doing that. Junior year, I started a radio show with my best friend, Quinn. It was called DC to BC. I'm from DC and I went to Boston College. And that was, I think, the beginning of me like understanding what community really was. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was building community, right? Before that word was like a buzzword. And we were just sharing our music tastes on air, right? And that evolved into a blog. This was around the blog era when hip hop blogs were like sort of replacing the radio for a moment, telling you what was next. We were the first to ever interview Kid Cudi because I found him on MySpace when I was at Def Jam and sent him a message like, yo, this Day and Night song that you have is a banger. Like, can we talk about it? I was early on J. Cole because at Def Jam, his manager at the time was a fellow intern and I had the platform. So he was like, yo, I see what you're doing. Like, can you put this on your page? Can you put his music on YouTube? So his first music videos are actually on my personal YouTube because we didn't know what we were doing. And I just have a lot of weird stories like that, like so many that I'm excited to one day share them. But ultimately, yeah, if I want to fast forward this, graduated, started throwing parties. The parties evolved into concerts. The first show I did was 2011 with a then unsigned Kendrick Lamar. And that was like a big moment for DC just because we're on the East Coast, he's from the West Coast. Independent promoters, no like Live Nation or AEG or anything, just like kids that thought this shit was dope. And we sold that show out and it was like honestly history from there. A year after that, started a festival called Interletro, which was us bridging the gap between the dance and the hip hop. At the time, you had artists like Kid Cudi rapping over like beats like MGMT, and you saw that world sort of colliding. So we saw that that's what we were into and listening to. And we also went to Coachella that summer. We did all the things you do at a music festival. I'll let you guys think about what that could be. And we came back and we're like, yo, we need to figure out how to put our spin on that, but for our city. That's how Trilectro was birthed. And yeah, we did that for about 6 years. During that time, I was supposed to go to business school, but instead I ended up joining the marketing team at Nike. I worked on an app called the Sneakers app, helped build that and launch that. Still going back to DC every summer to execute the festival, but I wanted to get out of the city and learn more, see how the sausage was made, see how to like operationalize culture. Because when you're in the trenches building the festival, it's cool, but you don't really know what you're doing. Going to the big machine, they show you like this is how it works, and then I eventually left Portland. I went to join the culture marketing team at Red Bull, doing like music festival live streams, short form, long form content. And eventually I made my way into the major label system. Started at Epic Records. Sylvia Rohn, very well respected Black female executive, brought me in. She met me during my music festival days. And eventually I made it to Capitol Records. And then most recently I was VP of Creative at Def Jam. And I guess the new chapter starts then when I was like, man, I hate my job. Like I climb the ladder of this corporate, shit. And I get to this point where you're like, man, is this what it's all about? Like, where am I at? Like I'm VP of creative. I'm doing nothing creative. Our roster isn't anything inspiring. And around that time, I played hooky one day. I had done a very transformative trip to Japan after like my best friend Quinn, he passed in 2020. He was who I built everything with. So, best friend from high school to college, started our radio show and blog and festival and everything I did. He passed unexpectedly in 2020. And, then you had COVID as well. So it was like a weird time where you couldn't really hug anybody. You couldn't really like mourn properly. And then it's just like climbing the corporate ladder for what seemed like forever. So I made it to this height, and the guy that I was supposed to be up at this place with was no longer there. He actually brought me to Capitol Records. He was the reason that I was there. So we were like on some executives by day, moguls by night shit. And, we had a big picture of what it was supposed to look like, and it just didn't pan out. So I'm at this place, man, like I'm at this job. My best friend's not around. I'm not inspired. My friend who I went to Boston College with, he hits me like, yo, I'm in town. He works at this company, Hypebeast. And he's like, yo, you should come check out this golf tournament I'm working on. And I was like, golf? Like, I don't know anything about golf. And it was also in Santa Clarita, which is like an hour away. But I thought about it and I was like, man, my man's name is Brooklyn, Puerto Rican dude from Brooklyn. And he convinced me to come out, and I did. And I think it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I skipped work, played hooky. Golf tournaments are often thrown on Monday, so this was a Monday. I already made up in my mind that I was quitting my job, so I was like, fine, let me just be open to new experiences. And it was the first time I had seen golf in a way that I could understand it. Everybody there was a peer of mine, or somebody I admired or respected, coming from the culture space, whether it was music, fashion, whatever. And they were playing this game that I just never thought was for me, right? Like golf has never been presented in the way that I could digest it. And ultimately, that was the beginning of me learning that this was the game I was going to invest my time in. And I mean, I don't know if that's helpful to pause there, but that's like the journey up to today.
You answered like 4 of the questions that I had ready for you. So I appreciate it. Everything you do, specifically around Swang right now, feels very, very intentional. And from your perspective, beyond the collective of golf, beyond introducing people to a space and a game that they may not have been introduced to, what are you really hoping to build?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so, I built Swang honestly as I called it an accountability mechanism, right? Like, honestly, I was like, I quit my job. I want to get better at something. And if I build community around it, it's going to force me to show up at the range, at the course, et cetera, to get better. So that was why I made it. It wasn't to do anything outside of like, the intention was for me. It was selfish, if I'm honest. But it soon became, once I put the first flyer out there and we had people come out, it was just so interesting because you got to see different folks, right? Like the community always is going to tell you what the deal is.
Mhm.
And for me, it was like seeing first timers who had never picked up a club, seeing me, a guy that comes from where I come from and is into what I'm into, playing the sport that again, I never felt like I was able to do. Cause I think access, a lot of people think it's financial and it can be, but it's also, do you see yourself in the space? If you don't,
Mhm.
then you may not be willing to sort of venture into that. And ultimately, for me, it was really just figuring out how to make sure that this community felt seen. What I saw was folks that have never held a club before and folks that have been golfing their entire life but never found a community that they actually resonated with were hanging out together. And golf was the vessel, but culture was the thing that brought us together.
Mhm.
Right. So when I saw that, I was like, man, I think that the sport is dope. Stuff around it or the wrapping paper is what people sort of have a hard time with. If I'm able to add cultural touch points to make it more digestible, more accessible, more familiar, then we'll see a whole bunch of my friends getting into the sport. And when I realized that it wasn't no longer my friends, but it was my friends' friends and people seeing it on Instagram and being like, yo, like this is amazing. What is this? Right. That's when I started to figure out like, oh, this is an actual thing. So it went from 10 people showing up to 200 people showing up every other week at this driving range. And it's, we cover the balls, we take care of club rentals, and then I bring instructors as well. And it's a free
Mm.
offering. That's how it started. Along the way, I met my business partner, Josh. He's from upstate New York, Ithaca, and he's a lifelong golfer, also touring musician. He was a drummer, and he played college baseball. And his life was like, he loved golf, but he never waved the flag because it never, none of his friends were into it. It was never the cool thing to do. So when he heard about this, I actually met him through a friend, AJ Washington, who started this thing, Float, Web3 sort of music venture out of DC. And AJ was like, yo, there's this dude, Josh. He's seeing what you're doing. He loves it. He'd love to connect. And Josh was the first person to make me realize like this isn't just a cool community. This is a viable company.
Mhm.
And so for the last 9, 10 months, we've been building very intentionally, spinning this community out into product and apparel, spinning it out into experiences and events. And then last but definitely not least is media and storytelling, right? So I think we can scale the business with those things. And I think the other big thing is like when I was at Nike basketball, we did a lot of stuff about consumer journey. And the muse was like a freshman who was trying to make varsity, right? And so it's like, how do you super serve this consumer with product and experiences to help them make that goal come true? And I look at, I was in a bunch of run clubs. And when I started Swang, I quickly realized like, running is like, all right, you start on your couch, you're fat, you're overweight, you don't know what to do with your life. You join the run club somehow through some experiences and some product, they get you to do your first 5K and you feel better. And you're like, wow, awesome. Then you go further. You do a half, you do a full. Now you're in this community of a bunch of people who are like minded, who are pushing you to get to this goal. And I was like, man, it would be so fire if we can figure out how to do that with Swang.
Mhm.
So we're figuring out a way to be a part of the consumer's journey as they get into the sport, whatever their entry point is, whether, again, never held a club before or lifelong golfer. Like, how can we super serve them and make them feel like we are the community for them? And I think it's just about being authentic and listening and figuring out like what they want. Right. And that's what the last year has been. It's been figuring out like how to cater to our community. Everything we do is in service of our community. And it's been dope. It's been the wildest ride ever.
It's been a pleasure to watch it. Actually,
Thank you.
gracing the LA Times and the
Yeah, that was
cover
cool.
of,
We were on Four magazine. Yeah,
yeah, and on For Magazine, which is amazing to see that culture represented in this type of space.
for sure.
But as you scale Swing, and you talked about a little bit with apparel and events,
Yeah.
what are you thinking about like monetization or business models? And maybe do you foresee like because you have a background in creative industries and culture, do you see like crossover between Swang and any type of fintech or mobile money or payment infrastructure as you move forward with it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess those revenue streams I mentioned, like you can definitely sell against content if you want to. You can obviously sell your apparel, and then experiences and events. I come from music festivals, so that's its own world. One of our slogans is "Pull up, tap in." It's a pun because in golf you tap in the ball when
Right.
you're on the green, but it's also the way I talk to people like, "Yo, pull up on me." tap in with me. And with that phrase, we're actually gonna, this is later down the line, but you have your cell phone and there's opportunity to use that, what is it, RFID technology to tap,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
share information, to make payments, to do all types of things. I mean, as I mentioned, like my partner, he's got a venture studio called Cathedral. They've built a lot of really interesting things in entertainment and tech and culture. So we're definitely all about that. They helped build FWB, Friends with Benefits, which is a Web3 community. So like the way we're thinking is on that same kind of time. So I think there's a lot of stuff we can do in that space for sure.
And in building this, right? Because I know we talked about there's the business of it, there's the culture of it, and I want to dig into more like your leadership and philosophy. What is that internal motivation or a creative calling or the desire for like autonomy in how you were searching for meaning?
That's a great question. Maybe one of the best questions I've ever been asked. Um, Let me see if I can actually answer that succinctly. I think, first generation Nigerian American, I've always been this creative person, but I feel like I've suppressed it, right? I've always been
Mm,
the guy who, your parents want you to be good. They came from where they came from to provide a better situation. And they didn't grow up in an era where creativity could really scale or make you money. You've probably heard all the jokes about African parents wanting their kids to be doctors or lawyers or whatever. And like, I mean, me not going to business school was like, sort of a thing.
mhm,
I took the GMAT, I just didn't go to business school. And it was because I felt like, man, everything I'm doing is for somebody else. Let me figure out like, what do I actually want to do? And I think a lot of first generation kids are always thinking about like, damn, I want to make my parents proud, but then like I have this burning desire in me to do something. As I mentioned, I've always been a curator since young. I always wanted to put people on to stuff, and I never did it out of like, it wasn't a money thing because I didn't even know
mhm,
you could make money. I just was like, I heard this thing and you need to hear it because it's fire. That's like how I've operated my entire life. I didn't even know there was an opportunity to make money doing anything like that. And yeah, I mean, you've worked at these big companies, big brands, and everyone tells you that this is where you want to be, but you get in there and you realize like, man, these folks aren't built like me. And there's plenty of smart folks. You learn a lot, but I think ultimately I realized like I think I just have a greater calling than working within a system. I think being a cog in a machine is not a bad thing at all. And like, listen, stability is amazing. I respect anybody who's got a full time gig because it's like stable. And it's been tough for me being entrepreneurial because this is not my first foray into entrepreneurship, but it is the first time I've been all in. I think in the past I've always held a full time job at a top company and done my stuff on the side. But I think in those situations, both things end up pretty mediocre, right? Because you're not pouring your all into a thing. I think the reason that Swang has grown outside of, our timing was great getting in the golf when it started to explode. You see LeBron and Ludacris and Kevin Hart and folks that you never thought would golfing right now. I think the other piece is that I'm putting my all into it. And I think it feels good to finally do that and not separate my energy. You know, I've always been hesitant to jump full time into it. And I think this is the first time I'm like, man, so like to be golfing for the first time 2 years ago and be on two covers of two magazines, one endemic, one globally recognized, is insane. And and the thing is when you're building it, you don't realize it because you're just trying to get to the next thing. I haven't been able to really sit and look at this magazine like, damn, I'm on this magazine. It says Modi's mission on the magazine, but I'm still trying to figure it out. So it's like I can't relish in that. And it's okay because ultimately I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to actually inspire and motivate. I think ultimately, if you look at my career and how I've sort of navigated, there's always this feeling of like, I want to create space for the folks that are never like heard, right? Like with music and Trelectro, it was like, let me bring this underground shit that like isn't, in front of everybody. Let me be the digger that's going to sort through it and find the gems and share them with people. Trelectro was like, all right. I mean, when I built this thing called Rock Creek Social Club in DC, which was like a nightclub party. And the premise was like Rick Ross and the big artists, the radio artists, Jeezy were coming to DC and doing clubs. But like I was listening to Theophilus London, Solange, Common, like that vibe. And I wanted to create a space for them to sort of thrive. And so I'm always trying to speak up to the counterculture and bring the counterculture some more visibility by providing space for them. I think with Swang, it's the same. With Trilectro, it was the same. It was underground artists. It was, emerging artists. It was DC local artists, putting them on the same platform and stage as globally recognized names, because I felt like our city was like, again, a hidden gem. DC's only portrayed in the media, FBI, CIA, government,
Right.
politics, but like we have such a rich culture.
Yeah.
And I think we tried our hardest to make sure people saw that. I think honestly, Trilectro changed the way people looked at DC culture forever. And, this is like the same thing, if I'm honest. Like, it's not even that I'm trying. It's just like, this is what I know how to do. It comes out. It's just what I do. It's literally being like, man, golf was black people couldn't golf, Jews couldn't golf, women couldn't golf, plenty of folks couldn't golf. This sport has been gate kept for so long. When I started to play it, I was like, oh, this sport's dope. It's not the sport that's the problem, it's the stuff around it.
Mm.
Let me figure out how to make it more approachable. Let me meet people where they're at. Let me figure out how to make it something that's a little more, again, approachable, digestible, accessible. And I'm not building a black golf company. I need to be clear. Like, I'm building a company for the others. Our slogan is for those who were never invited but always belong. And that
Mm.
speaks to so many people, right? If you're a skater that never connected with golf culture, like, cool, come hang out with us, right? Like, again, golf is a vessel. We're coming at it from a different angle because all the folks involved have creative minded, and creative past. So we're just looking at it from a different angle and trying to reframe it, not reinvent, but reframe it.
I appreciate your honesty and openness and candor, frankly, specifically in regard to spaces that aren't really open for everyone. And I feel like when you spoke to it earlier, people think that equity and access is all about money, when actually it's introducing people in spaces that normally are not accepting of them.
100%.
So over the next 3 to 5 years, where do you want Swang to go?
Great question. I mean, I've always told people that the Allen Iverson of golf comes out of a community like a Swang, meaning
Mm.
generational talent who's also culturally influential. And I think that helps the next generation to know that golf is an option for them. That's like the big picture. That's maybe like long term, but 3 to 5 years, I think we built towards membership. We figure out how to make Swang into a membership thing. I don't think this is a thing where we scale it to chapters. I think we go hyper local, right? And use the levers like product and apparel, events and experiences, and media to scale the brand. I think, destination trips to Jamaica, Nigeria, let's go to Korea, Japan, let's tell stories out there. What I think that's interesting about what we're doing is we're doing it from the bottoms up, right?
Mhm.
Like, the PGA Tour can't do what we do because they just can't. They don't care enough and they just don't have the bandwidth. I think if you are community first, or unlike pretty much every other brand in golf apparel companies come out and say we're golf. The difference between us is I'm not inspired by golf. I'm not putting my flair on some golf shit. I'm actually looking at it like, look, golf can look like how I want it to look, which is inspired by what shaped me: music,
Mhm.
culture, art, fashion. It doesn't have to look like golf's look forever. And I think that's what our advantage is. We're going to speak to a whole bunch of folks that have been waiting for this. They've been waiting for golf to show up in this capacity.
That's amazing.
Literally before this, we were planning 26 and 27, just like tempo moments to show up at. I think a big thing for us is culture meets golf and golf meets culture. So at the Masters, we can bring culture. There's already golf. I think we go to the James Brown Estate, which is in South Carolina, 10 minutes away from where the Masters is held, and do a really funky, experience that speaks to Black excellence, that speaks to defiance. I
Mm.
think that if we show up at All-Star Weekend, we can put our spin on what golf means to us and, add a little sauce to it. So that's the way I'm looking at it right now. I think you never know, right? Things change, but the big picture is, continue to evolve the game and push it forward and add these touch points that allow more folks to get into it. So a lot of experiences, a lot of events, a lot of storytelling, all types of stuff.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, the disruption, right? And possibly the potential disruption somewhere else, like going out. I'll show up in your backyard and do what I do, and take some of your people and bring your people over here where they feel more accepted. I appreciate that. Speaking to which, like, what would be your advice for people who want to, whether creative or entrepreneurs, who don't come from traditional backgrounds, whether that be fintech or golf or culture or creative, but want to build companies that intersect with community and then whatever that thing is, right? So community and culture, community and fintech, community and sports. Like, what would be your advice for them? What would you tell them?
Man, I mean, I think, the fact that I'm an outsider in this space is actually the advantage I have because I don't have any sort of like preconceived notions of what golf is supposed to look like or feel like. I have literally have no idea. So, like, I'm calling gloves grippers because why not? I'm doing stuff that I want to do. And I think,
Right.
it's just like a lot of my favorite artists, they were inventive, they were creative, they had a different perspective. I remember when Missy Elliott was making her album, I think she didn't listen to anything else because she didn't want to be influenced by what was going on at the time. And that's why it sounds so damn unique, her debut. I think your advantage is, the fact that you're not in it. Take
Mm,
influence from outside and weave that into what's existing, right? Like we're going to come to golf and yes, we're going to have golf apparel, but it's going to be the stuff that's going to barely exist or like they may look at it 3 times to be like, can you wear that on here? Like
hmm
we're not trying to fit in. We're
hmm
trying to stand out. We're trying to be disruptive and expressive, which, we're trying to golf loud. That's why we're bringing speakers to the driving range. It's changing the way people look at it. So I think it's about, taking what you do have and using it to your advantage. That's the advice I think I'd give somebody.
And then my last question is, given your journey, the complete journey, right? All of it. What is one piece of advice you wish you had, or one piece of advice that you would give to yourself, especially around balancing creativity, business, and purpose? What would be that gem you would drop on yourself or to anybody, or wish that you had known when you started?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm blessed for every experience I've had. I think, I wouldn't take anything away from what I've lived, but I do think a lot of it is literally believing in yourself. Like ultimately, I didn't believe in myself. Everyone else around me believed in me. I think I was trying to make other people happy. When I realized what I wanted, I leaned into it and I've seen progress. It happened when I was 37 years old, but so be it. And I think that if I really believed in myself, I mean, I probably would have never left DC. I would have built my music festival because I was like, this is it. Like, I really have conviction. I think, looking back at my journey, I always told people, like, I don't want to move to New York or LA. I want to make DC the spot. And that manifested in the music festival that changed my life. And it literally checked all the boxes. It was like, because everything you do consciously or unconsciously, once you put that flag in the ground, is going to lead you to that thing.
Hmm
So I think it's really believing in yourself, putting flags in the ground, and working towards those things. Because everything you do is going to bring that dream to life.
mm
And it just takes you to believe in it. If you don't believe in it and you walk away from it, you already know the outcome. But if you believe in it, you have the power to make it come true. It sounds cliche, but it is like the best advice. And I didn't really hear it or get it until I was older.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at my Instagram is Supermodi, SUPERMODI, and our handle Swang on Instagram, SWANG. We have the handle. I think on TikTok it's Swang Golf, and our website is swang.golf. I'm easy to find, man.
Thank you, brother, for your time, man. Time is the one thing we can't get back. And we appreciate you for all of your wisdom, all of your empathy. No, because I mean, just to keep it a buck, like, you got to be empathetic to think about other people. Of course, for yourself, but to build a special place and to build something special for people, you got to think about the people.
Yeah, no, man. I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't realize the weight of being a community builder until I was too deep into it. But
Right.
ultimately, it's what I've been put on this earth to do. So, do it every day. And I appreciate folks that recognize the importance of that. It's a job, it's a career, it's a lifestyle, it's a world, and I'm fully in it. So I really appreciate the time and having this conversation. Thank you.